Welcome to the Pit Village podcast. Thank you for joining us. Now, today I wanted to cover some laws of marketing. We're back to work, we're back to it. I've been updating those websites as always. We're sponsored by Prospect27. It's pay monthly websites. So if you are looking to get your business online, get in touch. It's prospect27.co.uk. So, marketing, it's hard, isn't it? I got a business to business organization and I've realized that actually I've not got a scalable business. There's nothing that my business does that is not available elsewhere on the market, which is a shame because it lets you know that really, over the long term, this may not be the £1 million idea that I had in my mind. Well, I didn't have that in my mind. When I first come into business, I wanted 100 customers to pay me £30 a month. And then when you get there, you realise that after taxes and expenses, you've only got yourself a full-time wage. And, you've spent 18 months building a business. Now, over the last 18 months, there's a lot of people that are actually rich. So we talk about this a lot, don't we? It's called an opportunity cost. What is the cost to me pursuing what I am pursuing? Like, what am I losing out on because I am going in this direction? What else could I be doing that may be a better opportunity? So I've gone back to the basics, and we're studying some marketing and the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, were a book introduced to me by an artist that I follow called Nipsey Hussle. So he basically opened the world's first smart store. Very interesting. And did a lot of stuff, promotional stuff within the music industry that has been replicated many times. The Proud to Pay movement, releasing products with his CDs. You'll see Taylor Swift, Eminem, and all these are doing that now. So, he was a innovator. But he introduced me to this book, not personally, but through one of his interviews. He was speaking about it. Read it first in 2018. But I'm just revisiting it because I want to get to know how I can market my business effectively. So if you're looking to become a market leader within your industry, you need to study this book. It's called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. But luckily for yourself, we're going to go through it today, and I'm going to talk about each one of these laws. So the first and foremost, you've got the law of leadership. It's better to be first than it is to be better. So a lot of people, they think that marketing your product is about your product and having a better product. Well, actually, it's creating a category that you can be first within. So rather than asking, what am I better? How am I better? It's much easier to get into the mind first than try and convince somebody that you've got a better product than the one who's already got there. So this applies to any product, any brand, any category. Your best bet is to be the first into the market. The leading brand in any category is almost always the first brand into the prospect's mind. So you think about spaghetti, what is it? Heinz. You think about Coke, it's Coca-Cola. It's not Pepsi, is it? It may well be, but again, Pepsi is the second. So it's always a battle between the first and the second, which is what we'll get to later on. But the law of leadership states it's always better to be first into the prospect's mind than it is to have a better product. So when you're setting up in business, rather than asking, how am I better? What you need to be asking is, the first what? What am I the first of? The second law is the law of the category. Again, if you can't be the first in a category, you need to set up a new category. So there's a saying that marketers create markets. That's what, if you're working in marketing, you create a new market, which you'll find in a book called Blue Ocean Strategy, which we'll cover at a later date. But that is very much about you finding your own category. So if you can't be the first in a category, you need to set up a category in which you can be first. So when you launch a new product, the first question is not to ask yourself, how is this better than the competition, but what is this the first of? The first what? So forget about the brands, forget about the products, think about categories. Everybody's interested in what's new. Nobody's interested in what's better. So that's the second law. The third law is the law of the mind. So we've got the law of leadership, the law of the category, and then the law of the mind. It's better to be the first in the mind than it is to be the first in the marketplace. So being first in the mind, it's everything in marketing. It's better to be first in somebody's mind than it is the first to the market. So it's not always the first product that gets out there. Actually, this modifies sort of the law of leadership, because you can't change your mind once it's made up. You could pump more money into advertising to get your brand out there, but actually, if there's already a brand that's in that person's mind when they think about your product category, you got no chance. So it don't matter if you've got a revolutionary idea or concept. The problem for entrepreneurs like us is to get that idea and concept into the person's mind. So you need to be first into their mind. So if you create a product or you create a service and it is great, by all means, it may be that there's no proprietary, you've got no proprietary sort of details within your product that can't be replicated elsewhere, basically. And another big brand's going to come along. They're going to create something that's very similar. They're going to put a lot of money into it. They're going to be the first into the customer's mind, and you're going to lose out. So it's not always about bringing the product to market. It's actually about getting into the customer's mind. The law of perception. Marketing is not a battle of products. It's a battle of perception. Actually, marketers know this, that perception is reality. Everything else is just an illusion. And that is just fact. There's no objective reality. There's no facts. There's no best products. You've got a flawed concept to the human mind if you think, you're working on a flawed premise that your product is a hero of your marketing and that you'll win and lose based on the merits of your product, where in actuality, it's actually just a battle of perception. Again, perception is reality. Everything else is an illusion. There's no objective facts. So it's a battle of perception. It's not a battle of products. The law of focus. The most powerful concept in marketing is to own one word in a prospect's mind. You burn your way into the mind by narrowing the focus of your product or service to a single word or concept. Not a complicated word, not an invented word, just a simple word taken right out of the dictionary. And it's got to be available. No one else can have a lock on this word. The most effective words are simple and benefit orientated. And owning a word in the mind of a prospect is very powerful. For example, if you talk about Rizzlers, that is actually skin papers. If you talk about Velcro, that is the brand. If you talk about jet skis, again, that is the brand. So these brands are sort of synonyms for the actual product. A jet ski, that is the brand of the product. It's not the actual product. They had this in the States a lot. In the book, they reference Xerox machines. So rather than photocopiers, they were called Xerox machines. And I'm sure you can think of many others where they own that word. They own the category. The law of exclusivity. Two companies cannot own the same word in the prospect's mind. The law of the ladder. Your strategy to use depends on which rung of the ladder you are. So for example, if you're not the leader, basically, if you're not the market leader in your industry and you're place number 2, admit to it. They give an example. Avis admitted that they were number 2. They told their prospects to come with us because we tried harder. It's not about being number 1. Actually, we try harder. And that brings us on to the 8th law, which is the law of duality. And again, in the long run, every market becomes a 2-horse race. Early on, a new category is a ladder of many rungs. Gradually, the ladder becomes a 2-rung affair. For example, Coke and Pepsi. Sprite and 7-Up. The law of the opposite. If you're shooting for second place, your strategy is determined by the leader. And you'll see this, let's look at Burger King and McDonald's. McDonald's is obviously the leader. What Burger King do well is target the opposite market. So if McDonald's go for Happy Meals and children, Burger King will target teenagers. And Pepsi did the same thing in the 90s. Pepsi took over the teenage market, and it became a real problem for Coke, actually. So if you're not actually aiming for first place, if you're number two, too many sort of potential number two companies that try to emulate the leader, you must present yourself as the alternative to the leader. The law of division is the 10th law. Over time, a category will divide and become two or more categories. For example, when cars first come out, it was simply cars. But now what have we got? There's many different types of cars. Of course, whether it's luxury cars, it doesn't matter. Basically, the category got broken up into many different categories. Luxury, high-end cars, 4x4s, And this is what happens to any category in the end. And it's a law of division. So, again, each segment will be a separate, distinct entity. And each segment has its own reasons for existence. And you think about this in the wine space. You got red wine, you got white wine, and there's different types. And this is how people differentiate themselves in a market. And again, this is how products create their own category and become leaders, or of course, compete with the leader and become the opposite of the leader within smaller categories. Marketing effects take place over an extended period of time. This is number 11, the law of perspective. So a sale in your business might increase the business in the short term, but there's an increase in evidence that shows sales actually educate customers not to buy at the regular price. So for every sort of short-term effect that you've got, the long-term effect is often the opposite. And you've got to consider this when you're marketing with your business. It's not about the short-term gains. It's about how is that sort of feeding your company for the long term. How does it separate your business and allow you to create a wider marketing campaign based on what you're doing at the moment. Number 12, the law of line extension. This is basically that too many companies try to go into far too many different products and services with the same brand. You look at Johnson & Johnson, for example. They have many different single products that are highly profitable, but they're all different brands. They don't oversaturate their own brand. Number 13, the law of sacrifice. You have to give up something in order to get something. If you want to be successful, you're going to have to give up something. The 3 things that you can sacrifice, either your product line, your target market, and constant change. The generalist is weak, so you need to be a specialist in an area and really define yourself as a specialist. 14, the law of attributes. For every attribute, there's an opposite effective attribute. Again, too often a company attempts to emulate the leader in the market. It's much better to search for an opposite attribute that allow you to play against the leader. So, not all attributes are created equal. Some attributes are more important to customers than others. And I suppose that is determined upon the product or services in which you offer. Attributes may include like, I'm cheap and affordable, but it takes 5 days. The opposite attribute would be, look, I'm fast. It's going to take you 1 day, but I might not be as cheap and affordable. The law of candour. When you admit to a negative, the prospect will give you a positive. I remember first reading this and thinking, wow, yeah, this makes sense to me. It goes against corporate and human nature to admit to a problem. Yet one of the most effective ways to get into a prospect's mind is to first admit a negative and twist it into a positive. So candour is disarming. Every negative statement you make about yourself is instantly accepted as true. You've got to prove a positive statement to the prospect's satisfaction. No proof is needed for a negative statement. So when a company starts a message by admitting a problem, people tend to sort of instinctively open the mind. Just take care with this. It says the law of candour must be used carefully and with great skill. Your negative must be widely perceived as a negative. It has to trigger an instant agreement with your prospect's mind. And then you quickly shift over to the positive. The purpose of candour isn't to apologise. It's to set up a benefit that will convince your prospect to actually buy the product. The law of singularity. In each situation, only one move will produce substantial results. Many marketing people see the sum total of a lot of small efforts beautifully executed. They think they can pick and choose from a number of different strategies and still be successful as long as they put in enough effort into the program. They seem to think the best approach is to get into everything. Trying harder is not the secret to marketing success. Actually, what you've got to concentrate on is the big moves that will produce a result. The one move that produces that substantial result. And try and replicate that. The law of unpredictability. Unless you write your competitors' plans, you can't predict the future. So implicit in most marketing plans is an assumption that things usually stay the same, or assumption about the future. And yet, such marketing plans are usually wrong. Most companies live from quarter to quarter, which creates a massive recipe for problems. And it says companies that live by the numbers die by the numbers. Good short-term planning is coming up with an angle or word that differentiates your product or company. Then you'll set a coherent long-term marketing direction that builds a program to maximize that idea or angle. Not a long-term plan, but a long-term direction. So while you can't predict the future, you can get a handle on trends, which is a way to take advantage of change. The danger of trends is that most companies will jump to conclusions about how far a trend will go. So again, it's all about your own assumptions and assessments and letting your ego get in the way. Which brings us on to the law of success. Number 18. Success often leads to arrogance, and arrogance leads to failure. Ego is the enemy of successful marketing. Objectivity is what's needed. When people become successful, they tend to become less objective. They often substitute their own judgment for what the market wants. Ego can be an effective driving force in building a business. What hurts is injecting your ego into the marketing process. Brilliant marketers have the ability to think like how the prospect thinks. They put themselves in the shoes of the customer. Number 19, the law of failure. Failure is to be accepted and expected. Too many companies try to fix things rather than just drop things. Admitting a mistake and not doing anything about it is bad for your career. A better strategy is to recognize failure early and cut losses. And I'll take a moment to just jump on that. So a month ago, I launched a load of new services with my business, and I had to think about it. After the first week of launching the services and, quoting customers for new packages and new services, £150, £300, I just disbanded the entire idea and just went back to, right, it's £30 a month websites, that's it. And it was a failure. And I just dropped them. It was like, this is not going to work. It's not, I'm just becoming a generalist here. I need to drop these two things and just concentrate on the website design. That's it. So I appreciate that. The law of failure. You've got to fail. You've got to try things. But don't be... for me, just if something's not working, you've got to let it go. The situation is often opposite to how it appears in the press. The law of hype. Number 20. When things are going well, a company doesn't need the hype. When you need the hype, that usually means that you're in trouble. Real revolutions in the industry don't arrive at high noon with marching bands. They arrive unannounced in the middle of the night and take you by surprise. Number 21, the law of acceleration. And just, again, on number 20, the law of hype, we talked about cryptocurrencies last episode. So that just proves it all, doesn't it, I guess. Number 21, the law of acceleration. Successful programs are not built on fads, they are built on trends. A fad is like a wave in the ocean, a trend is like the tide. A paradox: if you were faced with a rapidly rising business with all the characteristics of the fad, the best thing you can do is dampen the fad and stretch it out a little bit. It says a fad is like a wave in the ocean and a trend is like the tide. Like the wave, the fad is very visible, but it goes up and down in a hurry. Like the tide, a trend is almost invisible, but very powerful over the long term. Number 22, the law of resources. Without adequate funding, an idea won't get off the ground. You need money to get into the mind, and you need money to stay in the mind. First get the idea, then get the money to exploit that idea. So there we are. It's the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. Definitely read this book if you're in business. If you want to create a business-to-business organization, you need to know what it is you're doing to position yourself within the market. It's all about your positioning within the industry. And at the end of the day, if you're one of 1,000 companies that offer the exact same service at the exact same price, like how can you differentiate yourself? How are you going to sell that service? If I got on the phone today and tried to sell these websites, for me, I'm a website designer. It's £30 a month. I started early last year. I wanted to create myself a life where I had my own schedule. I got up in my own time. I got my own customer base. I built a little business. And that's all well and good, but then when you start thinking about growing this over 10 years, over 20 years, and you're looking at the immutable laws of marketing and how you're positioned in the, market, and you're looking at the business scalability, which we discussed on the episode last week. It's like, how do you scale this business? How do you take it to the next level? And this is what we're thinking about today with the 22 immutable laws of marketing. Have a think about this. We've got, first and foremost, the law of leadership, then the law of the category, the law of the mind, the law of perception, the law of focus, the law of exclusivity. So you can only one company can own that specific word that you're trying to burn into the mind. The law of the ladder, the law of duality, the law of the opposite, the law of division, the law of perspective, the law of line extension. You've got the law of sacrifice, the law of attributes. Then we move to the law of candour, the law of singularity, the law of unpredictability, the law of success, the law of failure, the law of hype, the law of acceleration, and the law of resources. So go and check this book out. It's definitely recommended. I've not covered it in too much depth today. We've just gone over some of the basics. And how do you think about this stuff? How do you think about these high level? Because if you're Coke and if you're Pepsi and if you're, a large organization, you're studying this stuff. Your marketing team knows about this book. How do we, as small businesses, sort of keep this in mind while we are marketing ourselves? Are we trying to get to the top of an industry? Are we trying to battle with, position number one? And if not, how can we use some of these tactics to battle for, a position number one locally? Why can you not be number one in your local area? Because that's always the, you don't have to be in the world. It doesn't have to be number one global competitor. It's like number one in South Emsall. The first podcast within South Emsall. Again, if you can be the first something, that's where you need to be. You need to be within your own category. And it's very hard. We will cover within the next month a book called Blue Ocean Strategy, and we're going to talk about marketing, and we're going to talk about building a business. I'm back to work. If you are looking for a website, all my customer websites are updated. I've invoiced everybody for the month. We're moving into June, and by all means, get in touch and we'll get you online. It's £30 a month. It's a managed website, and it's prospect27.co.uk. As always, sponsors of the Pit Village podcast. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll be with you tomorrow for an interview that I've conducted with a copywriter. I'll get that out there. And then we'll be speaking about marketing your business, building your business, scaling your business, and taking things to the next level, because that's where I am at the moment. That's what I want to do. And hopefully that's where you are at the moment, and that's what you want to do. Build your business, take your life to the next level. Let's do it. Let's keep building, because if you're not building, you are only causing destruction. You're either building or you're destroying something, and that's just the nature of humanity. So thanks a lot for your time. Let's get creating, let's get building, and it's the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing on the Pit Village podcast. All the best. Speak to you soon. Bye.